By the way,
people
Joe
doing
is
ridiculous
an
things
incredible
too.
co-founder and a really courageous person. We disagree on every political issue. That you want to work with Joe if you can.
Alex is not quite a communist, so I really support him. No, but listen, Liz, a lot of companies are going to die because there's too much money in tech, but there's some great companies as well.
Yeah, of course. Alex, Joe, a pleasure to have you. I think this was such a valuable conversation for our viewers. A rare joint appearance, gentlemen. Thank you both for being here. Alex is going to give us context on some of the big headlines coming out of Palantir. But first, let's start with you, Joe, and Silicon Valley Bank. Clearly, the depositors were made whole. Is that a good decision to have made that?
You know, Liz, there were rumors about this bank having issues for quite a while. A lot of us were not as exposed directly, but there were about 60,000 startup companies that were. If you look at the math, they probably would have only lost about 2 to 5% of their deposits. But, you know, on Friday, I took my money out of the regional banks. I had dinner even with the governor of Texas with a bunch of other wealthy people. They'd taken all of their money out of the other regional banks in Texas, in California. I think there was going to be a major bank run. I think the FDIC using a small amount of money to basically make depositors whole was a smart thing for the regional banks themselves. This is not even taxpayer dollars. You know, there's a lot of populists on both sides wanting to attack VCs as parasites, wanting to, you know, slate call to euthanize the VC class. Like, listen, SVB lost their money. SVB debt holders lost their money. I think it was smart that the FDIC stopped the bank run.
Okay. Alex, what do you think? And also, you've got to explain the early years of Palantir when you had venture capital money coming in to float you. And I mean,
we screwed that up. We screwed that up, too. We were exposed to auction rate securities in 2008. I didn't even know what an auction rate security was. You remember that? They locked up the money for about 5 months. It was terrifying.
This is the thing. I largely think the cradle of U.S. industry is innovation. We lead the world in tech. We need the innovation, and Silicon Valley institutions are crucial. There is another issue, which is why is Silicon Valley unpopular? And I think Silicon Valley is justifiably unpopular because, leaving aside things that Joe has invested in co-founding Palantir, a lot of what Silicon Valley has done is not something that anyone really wants to support. It's like building these large industries where only a small group of people get wealthy and everyone else feels like, well, what did I get from? As opposed to Palantir and other companies that work with the defense, with U.S. defense and with our allies. And so there's what should have happened in Silicon Valley. Okay, you can debate that, but I think largely we have to save our tech industry. And then there's why is Silicon Valley so unpopular? And Silicon Valley is unpopular because there are so few companies that choose America and its allies over our adversaries, so few companies that build things that actually have an impact on humans in America and in our allied countries, and so few people that aren't involved in this kind of weird bubble culture that somehow orients around them getting rich and the rest of us not profiting from it. So those are two separate issues.
We've got two billionaires right here. Joe, what is your response to that?
Well, I think if I was Alex, I would definitely see things in that extreme way. I remember being on the phone with Alex with a very prominent VC about 18 years ago, and the guy was laughing at us and saying we weren't a serious company because Alex didn't have a technical degree. So Alex proved him wrong. Alex now has $1.5 billion in treasuries, as far as I understand it, and no exposure to any of these banks in Silicon Valley. So he showed that guy. That guy wanted us to do social media at the time. He said, "Why are you working with the defense?" But I mean, Liz, I work on a lot of healthcare companies, a lot of companies in the biotech world that have saved hundreds of lives. Going to save thousands of lives. And there's a lot of overall are there lots of ridiculous things in tech? Were there monkey JPEGs? Yes, there's all sorts of ridiculous things. I think right now there's a lot of hate coming from people who think in terms of bumper stickers on the left and the right. That's totally unwarranted. I think the brightest spot of America is our innovation economy, is our brightest people creating new things on the frontier.
The part I definitely agree with Joe on is the thing that scares our adversaries the most, more than anything else, is the innovation in the American tech scene. So if you're Russia or China, you think about the missiles and other things we build, but what keeps you up at night are the kind of software products that we provide, that other companies provide.
Right.
And those are the things we have to be invested in, and they come largely out of Silicon Valley. Now, again, I think Silicon Valley would do well to understand, okay, we're interested in we're the bedrock of innovation in the world. Why do most Americans not like us? And just like asking that simple but legitimate question is super important for our country.
Palantir has expanded its business, has it not? You do big data for hospitals and all kinds of different companies, not just the government and the defense department.
What I'm involved in, what Palantir is involved in, and what I think Joe and his VC are also involved in is Silicon Valley once built things for the military and then exported it to everyday Americans and all over the world. And de facto, that's what we've done. So we built this kill chain. So a kill chain involves handoff process from AI, identifying target. You have to decide when the target, when a human's involved, when a human's not involved. You have to see the pedigree of the data. This is exactly the way every large institution works. Every large institution in the world is going to have functions that can be run by AI, functions that can't be run by AI. They need a taxonomy of where the data went, how it went. So if you're in a hospital, for example, there are things that only a doctor should decide. But then there are lots and lots of things that an algorithm can decide. But when something, how do you decide who decided what, under what conditions, and verify that the doctor only decided what he's allowed to decide? So decisions of life and death. And just so you have a hospital, AI, and kill chain. In fact, the technical prerequisites are the same for both. And this is exactly what Silicon Valley did for the first 50, 60 years.
With venture capital, Joe, and as we finish up, are you concerned that there will be a massive, pillar of salt in the VC world where too many people are going to be too frightened to lend to startups?
Well, Liz, there was definitely a bubble in tech. That part of the anger that's right is that there was too much money in tech. There were a lot of silly things going on that weren't focusing on the stuff that mattered that Alex is talking about. If Alex hadn't done what he'd done, he prevented tens of attacks on American soil. He saved the government billions of dollars.